Detail portion. We kind of do the summarize at this level, but the detail is available to you. And if I run it line by line to you, we'd be here until next week. So we'll just start off with the 2026 proposed budget. What I read you today indicates the changes that, or the recommendations that were made by this board on October 7th. And so we'll walk through those pieces with you. Starting out, okay,
No, it's probably. Right, one more time. I'll just drive for you if that's okay.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
I'm sorry, Christy.
that's okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, it's not even letting me drive.
Oh, I got it now.
Okay,
Okay. Okay.
if not, just give me the
Okay.
sign and I'm a good.
So, I'm gonna start out with our expenditures, then I'm gonna start out with operating expenditures, and we're gonna start with personnel services. Overall in the budget, personnel services increased 1.5 million or 4.8%, in 2026 proposed budget. Through that, we had the position changes and, are coming to you in resolution later on, in the agenda. So we had the additions and the expansions. We have about 206,000 positions, positions funded by grants. Another 184,000 funded by charges for services, and then 345,681 positions budgeted by with tax levy. And then the eliminations and reductions, we had 86,508 reduction that was applied towards grants, and then 447,000 as applied to tax levy. I did have a correction on here since the presentation was given to Christie. So I only had one telecommunicator on that line and for the dollar amount, and so that dollar amount is double. So just so you know that my numbers that I'm reading are a little bit different from the presentation. But overall, the net tax levy for those reductions was $147,000. Okay, go ahead, Christie, I don't have it. Okay, go ahead, one more time. So in the 2026 budget, it includes elected official increases per resolution, wage adjustments for the negotiated contract, and step increases with an additional 1.5 market adjustment on the current wage cycle. The next item with, the next item is on the retirement system. The 2026 rates did increase for the general category for the employer share by 0.25%. But there was a decrease in the protected category of 0.21% for the employer share. Okay, go ahead. And then the health insurance we talked about at the last meeting, we're projecting a 12% increase in premium. And this accounts for about $691,000 increase in the personnel services. So when you see that number, overall, that portion was $690,000. And the next item in the budget is our contracted services. Overall, that contracted services increased about $250,855 or 2.19% from the 2025 budget. We have about $157,000 increase for law enforcement related contracts. We have $102,450 increase for prisoner related contracts. $165,745 increase for mental health contracts. We have an increase on the projected for the use of the extension contract, but that was directly related to reduction in personnel services. We have a $60,000 increase in the jury trial expenses. This was because in 2025 we budgeted for the big trial that we had in the budget, so we reduced that area by, 60,000 in the 2026 budget, and we have a $220,000 decrease, for software maintenance contracts. And the next item is our supplies and expenses. Those increased $176,102 or 1.96%. Overall, we had a $232,000 increase for prisoner related expenses. Those expenses are offset with a revenue increase that we'll talk about when we get to the revenue section of the budget. Fixed charges, increased $19,213 or 3.9%. This is mostly related to property and liability insurance premium increases. And then the last area for grant and contribution decrease of almost 1.4 million or 37.66%. Overall, we had a $924,000 decrease in the economic development fund. We talked about that last meeting. That was a broadband project that we had seed money for, that we were going to contribute out. So that is not in the budget under this classification. So that decrease. We also had about $449,000 decrease in land and water conservation share funding. That also is a direct decrease in intergovernmental revenues. And lastly, we have an increase in the library fees of $4,736. Then we go to our capital improvement. We put together a 5-year capital improvement plan. This plan is from 2026 to 2030. And in summary, that's in that pages 96 and 104 and the proposed budget book that you have. There is a detailed portion that's listing all the projects and their what they're for in the big book. On the website, there's a separate document that shows all of those projects. On November 12th, the county board will be adopting that plan. Understanding that this is a plan, you know, obviously we have to make adjustments. We had to make adjustments on 2026 plan. So understanding that it's just accepting that we do have these capital projects and we'll look to how we're going to fund them. And if not, we'll have to push them down. So this is just a quick snapshot of the 2026 capital improvement expenditures. You can see we have about 13 million budgeted overall. This includes our debt service along with all the other capital outlay that we have. I included debt service in there because we're trying to overall just an overarching process. You can see in 2027 we have a pretty large jump in the law enforcement area. We go from 1.4 to 2 million. And then we drop back down. We also have those two projects in the register of deeds office in the maintenance department. This was for track index projects in the register of deeds office in the maintenance. We pushed those projects out to fund the law enforcement center, that project that they had for 653,000. So those projects were pushed over to 2027, which in light has kind of increased the 2027 items. So we'll have to revisit the 2027 and 2028 capital improvement plan to figure out which projects we'll be able to afford and then which projects will be pushed out into a later date. Okay, this is the funding sources we have on the capital improvement plan. And the very first line is how we funded our property tax, sales tax or interest. We try to fund our capital project by utilization of the sales tax, and then if we need more funding, we look for other areas for funding or push that out. So in 2026, we have about 2.4 million budgeted for utilization of property tax or county funded projects. In 2027, that jumps to 8 million, and then in 2028, that jumps to 10 million. So like I said, we're gonna have to take a look at those projects that are county funded and find either other funding sources or reduce those projects that are anticipated for that period. The next area that we have for expenditures is our debt service. At the end of 2025, our outstanding debt service will be about $47,550,000. And if you look at this slide, you can see that where the red dotted line is, these are maturities that are subject to optional redemption, which that means our financial advisors look at our debt service on an annual basis and look at interest rates to see if there's a way to refund that debt and make it for a better interest rate moving forward. And they analyze that, reach out to me, we have conversations and determine if that is a process that we would like to go through. The highway facility that will come for subject to the optional redemption in 2028 and the courthouse in 2033. Wow, 2033. It's not even that far away. But in the 2026 budget, we have that bond premium on issuance for the courthouse renovation. So we'll be utilizing $321,478 of that bond premium to pay the interest payment. So the total debt service payments for 2026 is $4,198,822. You can go ahead. Okay. We have a debt service policy at the county. We have a direct debt burden. The county has established a target maximum of 1.25% of direct debt burden as a percent for equalized value and $575 for direct debt burden per capita. The county's anticipated outstanding debt service of $47.5 million will be about 6.64 of the county's total equalized value of over $7 billion. According to the Wisconsin Demographic Service Center, Wapaka County's final 2025 estimated population, the county's direct debt burden per capita of $52,264 is $910. So we're $335 over our target on that policy. Next is the percentage of expenditures for debt service. The county's target maximum is 9%. The 2026 debt service payment of $4,520,600 is 7.4% of the total 60.8 million operating and debt service expenditures. So we're below that target as well. Tax rate for debt service, the county's targeted tax rate is $1.50. And the tax rate on the amount levied for debt service is 58 cents. So out of our debt service policy, we are under policy on all areas except for the direct debt burden per capita. So that's just something that we try to target moving forward. Moving on to our operating revenues, we have classifications of operating revenues. The first one being intergovernmental revenues. This is state grants, our shared revenues, general transportation aid falls into this category. Overall, that makes up about 16.2 million of our budget, or 24.71% of the total governmental fund revenues. The general fund decreased 455,000, but as we talked earlier, 490,000 of that is decreased due to the conservation aid posture payment owners. The transportation services fund increased $294,283 or 10.74% for the local road improvement program. And the health and human services fund increased $239,854 or 3.22%, with the new revenues funding the YJ innovation and bringing specialty care grants for those positions that we talked about earlier. Licenses and permits are just a small portion of the budget, 289,000 or 0.44% of the governmental fund revenues. Get an increase of 69,000. This was related in the planning and zoning department for increased fees that they have on their permits. Fines, forfeits, and penalties is another classification of $225,250 or 0.35%. And this is just a slight decrease of $750 from the previous year budget. Lastly, well, not lastly, we have public charges for services. That makes up about over $10 million or 15.22% of our governmental fund revenues. Most of our public, a lot of departments have public charges for services. Some of our larger areas are in the law enforcement area for the inmate related charges, and that would increase $709,912. And then the Health and Human Services Fund that accounts for about $532,382 increase. And this is mostly in the area of the CLTS program revenue and the medical assistant revenue. The LTS program is one of those programs that we had charges for services for the new positions that are requested. This program is a fully funded program within the county. Operating revenues are, again, we have intergovernmental charges for services. This is about $448,000 or 0.68%. This is just charging back other local governments or departments. And so we had a slight reduction of $17,000, which is actually coming out of the finance department for chargebacks to other departments. We're seeing a decrease in the service or providing. More departments are going and purchasing their own office supplies. They're not coming through our central service area. And so we're seeing a decrease in the chargebacks for those. Obviously, we have an expenditure decrease for that as well. In the law enforcement, the general fund accounts for $11,233 increase for the contract for Phillips and Fremont. And land water conservation reduction of $15,000, and for other county contributions for the demo farm grant. All right, miscellaneous revenues. This is where we start to get a little bit crazy here. The miscellaneous revenue is about 1.6 million or 2.43% of governmental fund revenue. The majority of this revenue source is interest on investment. And you can see that in 2021, the interest on investments declined sharply. And in 2022, the trend resulted in an unrealized loss of $104,904. Investment performance rebounded significantly in 2023 and 2024, with the year-end interest earnings of 1.1 million and 1.8 million respectively. For the 2025 estimated revenue, our projections to come in just slightly above what we had budgeted for, but interest rates have stabilized and the county's cash balance has decreased in for the investment. And so the proposed 2026 budget interest on investments decreased $437,500 as compared to the 2025 budget. This was a revenue source that was hit the budget pretty significantly in the process. County sales and use tax. This is moving on to the tax portion of the classification. You can see on this graph that the 2020 or the sales tax has increased through every year as a common denominator. For in 2025, we're estimating the sales tax to surpass the budget by about $374,000, or just under $375,000. The 2026, the budget has been increased by $539,623, and bringing it to a total budget of $5,662,623. These funds are all allocated to support highway construction projects and other capital expenditures in the budget. Property tax. So just an analysis on the property tax. As you all are aware, we are only allowed to increase our property tax based on our net new construction. Our net new construction percentage actually decreased from what was the 2024 payable versus 2025. So in 2024, we were allowed to increase our budget for the 2025 budget by $296,379. And then the 2025 payroll in 26 is $284,794. So it was $11,000 decrease from what we were allowed to increase in 2020 for the 2025 budget. So that was a significant impact also. I mean, net new construction does not equate to inflation. And so the county subject to inflation just like everybody else. And so this is an area that is not increasing, in the same fashion as our expenditures. The debt service levy actually is decreasing $56,873. And then the library aids are increasing $64,736. Right above the library aids is the county share of refunded or rescinded tax and certified. That amount we do not get until, we are actually after we've actually got the budget, we get that number. And so that is not part of our levy limits. So once that number is established, that is put into the budget. And so overall, right now, the total county property tax is an increase of $290,377 or 0.95%. Our equalized value increased reduced by increased 8.37%. The tax rate went from $4.52 to $4.21, a decrease of 31 cents or 6.86%. And for illustration purposes, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, the median home value in Kentucky County is $180,400. And so in the 2024 property tax for 2025 budget, this would have been $834.62 property tax bill for that home value. For the 2025 table for the 2026 budget is $777.54. So take this into account, fair market homeowner with the median home value of $184,500 should expect to pay $57 less in 2026 than what they did in 2020. The next slide just shows you the equalized value, summary of change for tax levy versus the equalized value and the tax rate by town, village, and city. Just summarized for your record. Also, the detailed portion is in your book if you want to see by municipality, what that looks like. Every municipality, the equalized value fluctuates depending on what the state calculation is on that. So overall, like I said, the net tax rate increased about just under 31 cents and to 4.214. We also have other financing sources and uses. This is transfers within the budget. In the general fund, we're transferring in $750,000 from the economic development fund. And we're transferring out $5.6 million, that's the sales tax that we're transferring out to the transportation service fund of $4.5 million, and then to the capital improvement fund for just over $1 million. And then you see the net impact between the health and human services fund and the opioid settlement fund of $96,715. So those are net transfers for the budget. And then we have fund balance changes. This is a calculation that's done based upon what departments have submitted for their estimated 2025 expenses and revenues, and then what we utilize within the budget. So overall, in the general fund is the fund that we excuse me. We're increasing the advance to the wetland mitigation payment of $479,000. We're utilizing restricted funds for dietine donations to purchase the dietine boat. We're using restricted opioid settlement funds of $75,865. Utilizing restricted bond proceeds against the capital improvements of $17.8 million and $321,000 in the capital improvement fund and then the debt service fund. Economic development fund, we're transferring that $750,000. We're going to reduce the fund balance in that fund. And then we have different assigned funds that we're utilizing. The most impacted in the jail control system. We're utilizing that $653,000 in the capital improvement fund, and then an additional just under $27,000 for other capital improvements. And you can see that under the unassigned fund balance, we have the advanced education bank. That's a direct reduction to the unassigned fund balance in the general fund, and then also the wetland mitigation fund. have, maintenance facility for utilizing $7,652. And then the contingency fund appropriation for allocating $125,000 budget, we're allocating $5,389 on the side. So, in changing that, the next page shows you what I would anticipate based upon this conversation, what our estimated fund balance would be. And so I'm not gonna go through all those, but you can see how we have the non-spendable, that's not part of the, and then we have the restricted and the committed, assigned and unassigned. And then if you go to the next slide, the general fund unassigned fund balance, we do have a policy set that states that we will maintain a minimum unassigned fund balance, 25% of the general fund revenue. With that calculation, based upon the 2026 budget, we have just under 38 million in general fund revenues, operating revenues. And if you apply that percentage, it would be about just under 9.5 million to meet policy. And the estimation shows just over 10 million, so we're still about $641,342 over policy. Pending that everything does flow through as estimated as the 2025 budget closes out. So we're still slightly above policy, but that has dropped pretty significantly over the last couple of years. Then the next is our enterprise operations. This is not a levy funded enterprise, is not fund with levy. They fund with their operating expenditures, about 18.7 million, of which 1.8 million accounts for the depreciation of their capital assets. They have their charges for services, just under 2.2 million for state government, and just over 3.8 million for local governments, and then local departments, most of this is the transportation services fund, just under 9.9 million, and then 35,000 for public charges for services. Miscellaneous revenues account for 30,000. Of the debt service, we have about just under 1.7 million budgeted in the debt service fund. When we close out the year, that levy and debt service payments can be transferred over to the highway operations fund, recognizing $542,935 in interest expense and $1,155,000 reduction in its outstanding liability. The way that enterprise operation works, that it's not the principal balance, is not an expense, it's just reduced liability. Anticipated net position change for highway operational is a decrease of $142,154. Some important dates. Today is the official reading of the 2026 budget. Next week on the 5th, the finance committee will meet and they will be approving a resolution for the capital improvement plan and then the resolution for the annual budget. And then November 12th will be the public hearing, and then those resolutions will come here to the county board for adoption. One thing I just wanted to make note of at this time is on that resolution, the county board is adopting the budget at the fund department and classification level. And as you know, we're in the process of a general ledger account overhaul within the finance area. And so there may be some recommendations through the auditor that I will have to come back to this board and amend the resolution by classification, because there's a lot of expenses that are being not expensed in the correct classification, and so we're correcting that with our new ledger structure. And so there is a possibility that after we get that all streamlined through, I was not able to get them both pulled together to have this budget. So it is a good possibility that next year you'll be receiving a second resolution. It would not be changing expenditures. It would only be changing the classification in which those expenditures are falling into, so that we can move into the 2027 budget, really looking at those classifications where they belong. That's all I have. Any questions?
Questions for a fund amendment? Vice Chair, right? Thank you.
Chair Dickinson.
I didn't yesterday. For the supervisors, we've had complaints that our audience cannot hear you when they hear the comments, questions, etc. And so we're hoping to improve that situation by having you stand if you make a comment or question. Or making a motion or second motion on have to stand. But if you're going to make a comment, please stand. Vice Chair?
Thank you. Page 5, the top slide with the debt service policy. According to Wisconsin Demographic Service Center, our direct debt burden per capita is $910, 335 over the. What is some ideas on how we can fix that or get things more in line?
We would have to have more population or change our policy. When we put together the policy, we have, we have targets. And we're not necessarily going to meet every single target within our policy, but it at least gives us a roadmap to make sure that that we are in line with how we want to move forward with that service. If we were like not meeting policy on 3 of these 4 areas, I think there would be some cause for alarm. Again, it's a target. I think the policy actually illustrates that it is what the county's target is. Because as that service drops, clearly that per capita will drop, or we would need more population in order to meet that policy. We could always go back and adjust that policy to more reflect what the debt service is. Those are things that we try to look at when we issue debt service. We go back to our policy, we look at our targets, and we say, are we in line with the most of our targets that we set? So I think that, I like to look at the percentage of expenditures for debt service overall, not exceeding the 9% of your operating, and just kind of looking at that piece. And then the tax rate too is, something you want to look at and see again. That those are our options, target, or the debt service has an issue. So there's no way that they stop that.
Any other questions?
I just want to say that Heidi has really dedicated a lot of her time here, and I realize her time is short-lived probably. But I'm probably one of the longer supervisors standing in front of you over these years. For example, on Saturday morning, I sent her an email. Well, 2 minutes later, I get a response. That's how dedicated she is. Don't underestimate her ability. She maybe will say she does not like the delegate. I agree. But she carries a heavy burden and she does a great job. Thank you, Heidi.
Very much agree. Any other questions? Going once. Okay. Thank you, Heidi. All right, we're ready to move on to resolutions. We have several resolutions to put off. Starting with resolution number 17, 2025-2026, the cooperation agreement for the community development block grant program.
Now therefore, pursuant to Wisconsin statute 66.0301, Wilkeston County and the Central Wisconsin Housing Region agreed to cooperate in the submission of an application for such funds and agreed to cooperate in the implementation of the submitted CDBG program as approved by the Department of Administration.
Is there a motion to adopt resolution number 17? Okay, I think Supervisor Xavier. and Supervisor Henry, seconds it. Any questions or discussion on resolution number 17? If not, please vote.
Resolution. Last chance to vote. That carries 21-0.
Next, we have resolution number 18, 2025-2026. Grant of easement for the Wisconsin Public Service at Waupaca County Courthouse.
Now therefore be it resolved by the Waupaca County Board of Supervisors that the grant of easement is authorized as presented and shall proceed under the terms and conditions set forth therein. It is further resolved that the Waupaca County Board Chairperson and the Waupaca County Clerk are authorized to execute instruments necessary to complete the transaction referred to herein. Said documents have previously been reviewed and approved by the Corporation Council.
Is there a motion to approve resolution number 18, Supervisor Scott? Makes a motion, Supervisor Vasquez seconds it. Any questions or discussions on resolution number 18?
This is for the new electrical service to come into the courthouse, so, it's we're gonna put a concrete pad on and sitting the new transformer on top, and WPS needs the easement to make it a big pad.
Diane?
Supervisor.
Supervisor Vasquez?
And we're in a little bit of a time rush with it. Go after November first, they put in the extra. Winter.
Yeah, they have a frost charge starting November first, so we're trying to avoid that. The project is shovel ready, so, as soon as the easement is signed, Myron is I believe is gonna be pouring the slab.
Great, we gave extra fees. Any other questions? Not, please vote.
Last chance to vote. That carries 21-0.
Next, we have resolution number 19, 2025-2026, establishing compensation for the county board chair and vice chair.
Now therefore be it resolved by the Waupaca County Board of Supervisors that the compensation of supervisor, including the board chair and vice chair, as elected by the board, be set as follows, effective on the first day of term of office that begins after the date of this resolution, and shall remain in effect until a subsequent resolution be passed by the board.
Motion, Supervisor Vasquez makes a motion. Is there a second? Supervisor Zlot seconds it. Questions or discussion? Okay, very good. Please vote.
Are you okay doing a voice vote? Supervisor Richie, how do you vote?
Yep.
Last chance to vote. That carries 20-0 with one abstaining.
Next, we have resolution number 20, 2025-2026, establish the wages for the administrative coordinator.
Now therefore be it resolved by the Waupaca County Board of Supervisors that the compensation for a Waupaca County Administrative Coordinator annual salary be set at $6,000 and shall remain in effect until a subsequent resolution be passed by the board.
Motion to approve resolution number 20. Supervisor Wade. Second. Supervisor Shelley. Any questions or discussions on resolution number 20? None, please vote.
Last chance to vote. That carries 20-1.
Next, resolution number 21, 2025, and 2026. Wapaka County wage and salaries.
Now therefore be resolved that the Wapaka County Board of Supervisors does hereby authorize an annual compensation increase of 1.5% effective 1/1/2026 for wage and salaries of employees paid in accordance with the Wapaka County employee wage schedules.
Motion to approve resolution number 21. Supervisor Yeager. Motion is made to approve. Is there a second? Supervisor Fedorowicz. Motion has been made second to approve resolution number 21. Any questions or discussion? Supervisor Harding.
No. Program finisher. We get lunch on the 1.5 with that. So was that 1.5 on last year's wages for the 2026 wages? Same thing here.
Good morning, everyone. So we have, a wage schedule, a chart like this, similar to what all other counties have. And this entire chart then is adjusted by that 1.5%. So if somebody's at step 3 here, they would be, that step would go up by 1.5. And then whenever they would get their step increase could be on their anniversary day, some point in time during the year, they would move to the next step. So the 1.5 was on this chart, and the way our compensation chart works across that base kind of years. They're kind of answering your question. 2 different pieces.
So what is the average amount that for the step 1.5?
It depends on how many individuals we have. Steps in the first 7 steps, the first 6 steps, these are 2.5% apart. Steps beyond the midpoint and up are 1.25. So depending on where somebody is, they would have the 1.5 and maybe a 1.25 at some point during the year, or somebody lower on the schedule would have a larger step, but still the same 1.5. So tell you what the average is, and then do some deep dive into that.
More on the way.
Potentially, right, depending on the time, if their anniversary date is January 1st, yes, they capture that to the whole year, their anniversary date, or July 1st, and they get a step on that date. 1.5 is for the year, but then only a portion of it is that larger amount.
2026. Or it's going to change more next year.
Whatever it is that you sign annually on the wage schedule, you choose not to do anything, to make that thing differently. And then the step structure is based on their evaluation and whether or not, wherever the timing of that is. Of the entire July 1st, they would be eligible this coming July 1st for a step increase on the updated chart.
And that worked another 1.5%. But
I'm sorry.
give me a fourth, another 1.5 besides your step. For the situation that we're in right now.
That's within the budget right now, so as, can we afford that? I think that's a objective question too, depending on what adjustments you want to make. If you didn't want to do that, we have, some portion of one. Yeah, in the budget that I think.
That we're trying to correct. Or yes. Correct.
I think that, somewhat of a philosophical question, you want to balance your debt on the backs of your employees, say they're going to take a lesser cut so that you can afford to borrow more funds, or do you in the future plan to borrow less so that you can have quality employees, for really 2 different. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Resolution number 21. Okay, let's vote.
Last chance to vote. That carries 18-3.
Next, we have resolution number 22, 2025, 2026. The 2026 staffing, new positions, reductions, and expansions.
Now therefore, let it be resolved that the Wabaker County Board of Supervisors does hereby approve the new positions, expansions, eliminations for 2026 as listed above.
Thank you. Motion to approve resolution number 22. Supervisor Sluse, makes motion, Supervisor Vasquez seconds it. Any questions or discussions on resolution number 22? Not, please vote.
Last chance to vote. That carries 21-0.
All right, moving on to ordinances. Okay. Amendment to Wabaker County Code of Ordinance, Chapter 2, the governing body, amendments to section 1.3, subsection.
So I did break down the chapter 2 amendments, which were voted on at the special county board on October 7th. I broke down those 2 changes, to 2 separate votes, for you guys this morning. The first one that you're, looking at now is there was a motion in a second and then passed by a majority to eliminate the per diem, for participating and attending interviews. This did go to LGES. LGES made an amendment to that and voted on, and it was approved there to make an exception for interviews for managerial positions.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that current.
Motion has been made to return the motion to its original wording. Is there a second? Supervisor.
1 second to take that in.
So folks can understand what's happening, because depending on Supervisor Vasquez's voice not carrying, it's removing the language of being paid per diem for supervisors attending managerial position.
Can you clarify who attends interviews for a managerial position?
Yeah, I don't know, Mandy wants to speak to that.
It's you know, so typically when it's a supervisory position, it's the department head and more than one supervisor of that position, but let's say if someone in Mary's department and she's hired a manager, she would sit in on that as well as her committee chair, and then also someone from the HR committee. If it's a department head position, or our manager position as well, it would be typically the committee of jurisdiction. So when we were filling Mary's position, it was that health and human service board.
So just for clarification, if there's a supervisor attending any interviews, they do not have a vote in hiring an employee.
We're talking about the per diem.
Oh, we're talking about, okay, but regardless though, if they're sitting at the meeting,
Yeah, but
they
it's
have no
election.
influence on who's being hired because they don't have a vote.
So if it's a department head position, it's usually, generally a consensus, sometimes the vote is to select a particular candidate. If it's selection committee just hiring a manager of a position, the department head and that chair typically have the final say. But usually in all the interviews I've sat in, there's pretty solid consensus on what the final candidates are. But it's not a voting process.
So what's the role of a supervisor in doing that an interview? If they're, why are they there? I mean, because essentially you have the staff that have been hired to hire another person, so why would supervisor need to be there other than just,
That's been in our policy.
then I repeat, there's no need for per diem for them to be there if there's really no role for them to be there other than
Thank you.
my opinion. Thank you.
Any other supervisor veterans?
I think I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I come from the public aspect. But when we hire somebody as a department head, we're gonna be paying them over $100,000. I believe we need more than just those couple people there. So somebody from finance or HR. If a few dollars or $70 are gonna kill this thing, we got another problem. So I think department heads, maybe we only hire one a year. But to keep that money in there, to have a few extra minds in there to think this through, when we're gonna be spending, and I'm talking 100,000 just for salary without benefits, I think that's pretty crucial. We do it in the outside world. I'm just letting you know how it works. Thank you.
Any other comments? Supervisor Vasquez?
Okay. I understand that.
And
My view on it is that supervisors that still don't show up and put their input into the interviews for our managerial positions, that's true. There's really not a whole lot for us to do, keep that part of it. But for a department head, if you don't have the respect to the position of a town board supervisor to show up just because you're not getting paid, then you're in the wrong business. Make your money, a lot more money in quick. But if you're here to help the county, that's what you should do, even if you're not getting paid. And Mr. Fedorowicz was right, it's not a lot of money. But it's more on the principle of this whole board voted on that resolution and sent it to LCHS. And to have the committee try to change what the full board had already voted on is just a matter of principle. The committee shouldn't be telling the board what to do. So, thank you.
any other comments? Supervisor Swan, please stand up. Again, sorry.
Pretty simple issue. I agree with Mr. Fedorowicz and his comments. Just look at who we are today. Cuyahoga County Board of Supervisors. We're supervisors over the department head. We're supervisors for sheriff's department, et cetera, et cetera. And anybody who is being hired, regardless of the department head or somebody in that department, if we're on that committee, chair of that committee, we should be there. And we challenge it as board. Because again, board of supervisors, that's who we are. Department head, real report to the department heads, they report to us. And so he understands what the heck our job is. Not just come to meetings, get $75 or whatever. It's to take hold of what the heck's going on here. And if we would have had an opportunity to get our noses at what's happened this past year, we wouldn't have had all this problem with budget. Because it seems like there's just three people that are playing around with it and bring it to us and say, here, prove it. Or, well, we can't. We gotta make some changes. So, again, county board of supervisors.
Any other comments? Vice Chair.
we are elected county board of supervisors, but I'm a freshman. This is my first term. You give your time, and I'm not on a lot of committees. When I show up in finance, I show up where it's important when I can. And I'm not looking to get paid. That isn't why I'm here. People, when I go around and get signatures, they thank me for volunteering. Well, if I'm getting paid, what am I volunteering? So I think the board spoke on October 7th. And if we're here for the buck, we're here for the wrong reason, as has said. I think we need to go back to what the board voted for on October 7th. Thank you.
Any other comments? Questions?
Clarify. Are you going to be changing the policy then also?
Correct, that's a good question, Judy, and so we have your county board ordinance that decides what the per diem is and when the per diem applies. So that's what you're addressing today. We also have a personnel policy procedure manual that talks about selection, the process for selection, interview committee, and things like that. So we talked to HR and the counterpart to this, removing the part that requires supervisors to be there. They're still welcome to be there, but it's not going to be a requirement to be there. So, as I mentioned, if somebody chooses to be there, they should be there at their own choice, and that, you know, it's not required by policy. And that is your question.
So what you're saying is, if there is a position where someone from HR, according to policy, should be part of that interview process, they will be compensated, but if someone else that was supervisor showed up, they're not compensated.
What you're dealing with today is the same for any interviews. There will be no compensation for county board supervisors. If the managers are hiring, obviously they're there on their work time, and they would be compensated. So nobody from the HR or any supervisor paid for attending the interview.
Any other questions? Discussion. Supervisor White.
As someone who's lived through this, with supervising and so forth, I always felt that it was secondary to have supervisors there. Period. Not the department head or the chair. That's the one exception where I felt, at least with the department head interviews, their input was necessary. Up to that point, those supervisors were helpful. Discussion. I feel that the preventing work played a role, least wise in the managerial portion of it. The department head is the one exception where I believe the chair perhaps should be there, and I would even ask for consideration of the amendment, your amendment, that in this case, the chairs would be compensated. I think they are critical, again, in the department head selection, but up to that point, being there, it's helpful to supervisors, but I don't think it's absolutely.
Thank you.
For no friendly amendment, so let's vote on this up or down, and then if there's other considerations for supervisory amendment.
So we're not making an amendment to the amendment to the amendment. Right, very good. Any other comments, questions?
What are we voting on?
Okay.
So that.
The motion was made by Supervisor Vasquez, seconded by Supervisor Prager, to approve the amendment to Wapaka County Code of Ordinance, Chapter 2, the governing body, to return the original amendment, which was
Nobody can pay.
supervisors are not entitled to a per diem for participation or attending interviews. Period.
Period.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Ready to vote? This is the amendment.
Last chance to vote. That motion carries 19-2.
So therefore, because it passed, we're back to the original amendment.
That is correct. Diane, do they need to vote on the motion yet? No? Okay. Give me 1 second to add that vote to your iPads
That's what we were voting on.
as an amendment, yes, so we. Okay, so this, vote will be to approve the prior motion as it was amended.
We had a vote.
We'll need a
We'll need a motion and a.
So supervisor, supervisor,
Consent.
president. Supervisor Vasquez. Seconded. Any questions or discussions on that?
Clarification then, do I understand it right that we're voting on the ability that if a supervisor could get paid and an interview if he's so hired? That was the.
No.
I don't know. Okay.
Nobody's getting
Yeah,
paid.
no payments, a voluntary attendance is permitted, but there will be no per diem for attending any interviews regardless of.
Yeah, the previous vote was to approve the amendment. Now you're voting on the motion as it was amended. It's a little bit, I know.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, please vote.
Last hands to vote. That carries 20-1.
Okay, we're up to second ordinance B, amendment to Packer County Code of Ordinance, chapter 2, the governing body, section 3.13, subsection G.
So this portion of chapter 2 also was approved by the majority at a special October 7th county board meeting. It is removing the language from 23 or 2.13, section G, to eliminate the meal reimbursement for county board supervisors, which was a daily allowance at $34 per day when they were on the county.
Any question, motion to approve? Supervisor Hardy. And Supervisor Sulis seconds it. Any comments, questions? Supervisor Yeager? No. Any other comments, questions? Not, please vote.
Last chance to vote. That carries 20-1.
Next, we have a contract to approve. With the hauling and disposal contract extension. Motion. Oh, very good.
I can just put up so people look at it. This was a contract that was previously taken to the solid waste, committee. So it was approved, their motion made by Ken Van Dyke and seconded by Scott Chasky to approve the recommended 2-year contract extension with GFL and their landfills and send it to the county board for final approval. This extension moves the end date of the contract to the 31st of July, 2028. Motion carried without a negative vote.
So the motion to approve the hauling and disposal contract extension, Supervisor Zogs, second by Supervisor Bissett. Any questions or discussion?
Can you repeat for me the motion and second? please?
Supervisor Saw, make a motion.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions? None, please vote.
Last chance to vote? Did you need to change? Okay. That carries 21-0.
Let me get your question. I'm
Oh.
not chairman.
Can we take a break? Oh, sure. Let's take a 5-minute break. I'll start out. My report. Supervisors, Wendowski, Will, Greger, Jesus, Hardy, Vasquez, myself, and the Wisconsin County's Conference of Lacrosse, September 21st to the 23rd. The highlights of the conference for me were, first, the business meeting on Sunday that I attended. The association's in good financial shape. We passed a bunch of resolutions with limited debate. The association's governmental affairs rep reported that there's a lot of uncertainty around the 2026 budget with a new governor, changes to legislature with new district boundaries that could flip one or both houses of legislature to the Democrats, and the impact of the federal changes to state and local government. Then on Monday, the first workshop session for me was on county highway finance. There was a lot of discussion around rising costs, including items like equipment. The cost of a new truck has doubled in the last 8 years. Increases the cost of asphalt, flat, or lower revenues around things like the gas. Long lead times to get new equipment. We wait for new trucks, for example, and an aging infrastructure. The two panelists on counties have both gone to the real tax as a source of funds to fund capital projects. Some examples of rising costs include asphalt oil costs from a little over $300 per ton in 2021 to over $600 per ton in 2024. Price of plow trucks rose from 195,000 to 16 to 320,000 in 2024. Salt costs rose from $70 per ton in 2018 to over $90 per ton in 2023. The second workshop session was on Monday was on cybersecurity, where it's increasingly difficult to keep up with artificial intelligence and threats around cybersecurity. The speakers discussed how counties should get AI policies in place, do penetration testing, cooperating with other counties to use server backups rather than cloud storage, which can be hacked. Look at hiring consultants to assist with cybersecurity rather than depending on just staff to stay on top of AI. And scan systems regularly for AI intrusions. Do vulnerability testing. Know what guardrails are in place. Purchase cybersecurity insurance. And possibly create an AI copy of your IT person. All kind of interesting. Create artificial intelligence person, a real person. And that's what we recommend. The final workshop, a session on Monday was on county board rules. The speakers discussed rules that should be in place around setting expectation for supervisors, having public comment, creating procedures for moving supervisors from committees, advantages of being self-organized, and many other topics related to supervisors and county board meetings. My first session on Tuesday was another session on AI, local government. Artificial intelligence is being used more and more by counties in such areas as analysis of zoning applications and analyzing and summarizing financial data. Artificial intelligence is changing rapidly and becoming, for me, very scary. It is now generative, so it can analyze data found on the internet and generate conclusions. For example, in the past, you could ask AI to prepare a list of all the residents' wives, and it would give you a list. Now you can ask it who the smartest wife was, give the research degrees and other info, and tell you who it thought the smartest person or the wife was. You have to be careful though. Oftentimes it does provide false or misleading information So all from the AI should be reviewed before being shared with the public. And counties should not be accessing private data with artificial intelligence. And just a personal experience, I was using generative AI to tell me how many counties in the state of Wisconsin have less than 20 supervisors. And I came back with a statement that said there is only one county in the state of Wisconsin that has less than 20 supervisors. And I knew that would be false, so forth. So I went out there and looked, the first 20 counties I looked at, there were 5 that have less than 20 supervisors. So again, we have to make sure, look over your homework. Anyway, the second session for me on Tuesday was on shared services. One of the speakers was Todd Romanesco from Calumet County. As counties look to save money, there are many opportunities to share services at one cost. Areas like human resources, payroll, IT, highway maintenance, consolidated dispatch, regional planning, financing, and procurement. Benefits of sharing include economies of scale, improved service and quality, enhanced compliance. Examples were given of shared services between departments, between counties, between public and private agencies. However, there are challenges to sharing, including resistance to change, data privacy, and determining the split of expenses. The last session on Tuesday for me was on interactive budgeting. The speaker described an exercise he did with the full county board with set priorities and made with department heads to consider as they prepare their budgets for the year. Overall, I thought it was a very good conference. Gave me lots to think about. I encourage all you supervisors to consider going to it next year. And next, we will hear from other attendees. So other attendees, Supervisor Bosworth, we
Like they said, really good, a lot of different information to go. The biggest question and answer portion after each seminar were the same questions that I wanted to ask. Answers were, coming back, well, you're not the only one, but the speakers tell me we're suffering the same thing. Mostly trying to find money for the highway department. Or how to generate more for the highway department. So, like Dave said, I encourage everybody to go get this information firsthand. The facility was great. Not that hard drive. That's all I have.
Let's speak. Supervisors, Ron, motion series.
As a new supervisor,
Thanks.
Session, but I will echo what he said. I think most counties in the state of Wisconsin are struggling to balance their budgets and meet all. So we are not the only ones. One of the things that they really stressed was start working on it July.
Great. Any other comments?
Questions were great, but just going from the building and talking to other supervisors, that's where I learned most of my information. Because they have so much to give, and they have so much experience that going to table to table, when you're having dinner, having breakfast, and talking to other people, just don't go to the session. So it was very good.
I thought the conference was very well done. The theme was team. And so I think they did a really good job of promoting teamwork and how we're all to all work together I had a learning section about highway stuff, and one of the things that I'm still holding on to, I think we need to redefine interstate commerce, make it more modern so that we can start, implementing toll roads as a way of highway fund. So, I'm still working on that. I wanted that redefined, make it more modern. We can start with toll roads. Thank you.
Came out of the job. Well, I'm a conference guru because I worked at the sheriff's department for 41 years. I went to a lot of conferences. But the key to conferences for me is not only learning all the stuff, everything that everybody was talking about, but it's networking. And if you're concerned about the meal that we cut off, don't be. All you have to do is go to the networking part. And these vendors have so much food out there, and if you're hungry, go home, go to your room hungry. Well, shame on you, but you gotta show up and you gotta do it. So of course, we don't do all that, so I did all that, and the networking is phenomenal. And that's what makes you successful, because you learn more there than you do in the session, as far as I'm concerned. But the sessions are very good as well. And they do an excellent job. They did do an excellent job putting the comments.
Dennis?
Probably nothing additional to add, except that you get a pat on the back from Bucky Dad.
Never knew we were running. Very good. Well, thank you. Okay, moves on next to the county board chair, monthly report, keep it short. First of all, very important stuff. Thank Supervisor Rob Wade, delicious treats this morning. And then next, I want to thank the Clintonville Utilities for having me speak at their open house. It's a beautiful building we constructed, and the citizens of Clintonville will be very proud. And on Thursday, we welcomed about 22 employees to Waupaca County. Once again, I think our Human Resource Department did a great job of finding quality employees, for the new employees, as all forward. And that's all I have for now. Any words of wisdom?
Oh, I don't know how wise, but I just want to thank Finance Department for putting together a budget and making things come together. They had their work cut out for them again this time. And that, just to repeat again, that we all need to be mindful of what's our mission, what are we going to focus on, where are we going to be trimming, how can we make the next budget come together. We don't have that $750,000 to pull on this next time around. So be thinking ahead of time. Everybody get your wheels turning on how we can constructively make the next budget come together. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Moving on to appointments then, I would like to reappoint Jack McCarthy as the board of directors and the board of directors of the Foxborough Workforce Development Board for a 3-year term. Is there a motion to that effect? Supervisor Greer, is your second? Supervisor Lott, second. Any questions or discussion? If not, please vote.
Last chance to vote. That carries 21-0.
In your packet, we have correspondence from Waupaca County Planning Zone fee schedule. Our next meeting is going to be on a Wednesday because Veterans Day is on Tuesday, so the day after that, Wednesday, 12. And with that, I look for a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Yeager? We are adjourned. Thank you all for joining.
Definitely.